Keanu Reeves stepped out of the supermarket, a bag of groceries in hand, when he felt a small tug on his jacket. Turning, he found a little girl, no older than 6, clutching the fabric with trembling fingers. She had blonde hair, a pink dress, and wide, fearful eyes. For a moment, she just stood there, shaking. Then, when she finally opened her mouth, 3 whispered words made Keanu freeze. His grip tightened on the bag. His heart pounded once, and without hesitation, he reached for his phone and dialed the police. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow, we have another one you won't want to miss. The sun was beginning to set, washing the sky in shades of gold and orange. A soft evening breeze carried the scent of warm concrete and fresh trees. Dressed simply in a jacket and sunglasses, Keanu had been lost in thought, considering which movie to watch that night, when a sudden impact against his leg made him stop in his tracks. Looking down, he saw her, small, breathless, and terrified. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, as if she had been running for a long time. Keanu crouched, setting his bag on the ground. He softened his voice. "Hey, are you okay?" The girl hesitated, lips trembling, struggling to find words. But instead of answering, her eyes darted past him, scanning something or someone beyond his view. Keanu followed her gaze. Nothing seemed unusual. Just shoppers heading to their cars, people loading their trunks. Yet something about her reaction unsettled him. "Are you lost?" He asked again, his voice even gentler. She tried to speak, but only a shaky breath escaped. Tears welled in her eyes, threatening to spill over. Before Keanu could press further, a sharp voice cut through the air. "There you are." A blonde woman strode toward them, her tone a mixture of relief and scolding. Keanu rose slowly, his gaze never leaving the girl. The woman, dressed in jeans and a blue blouse, crouched down and grabbed the child by the shoulders. She forced a laugh. "You scared me." "You can't just run off like that." Keanu watched closely. The girl didn't react. No sigh of relief, no smile, nothing. If anything, she flinched, just slightly, as if recoiling from the woman's touch. The woman looked up, flashing a quick, polite smile. "Thank you so much for staying with her. I'm her aunt." Keanu crossed his arms. The girl remained silent. No confirmation, no ante, just fear. "She okay?" he asked, noting how stiff the child had become. Yes, just scared," the woman answered too quickly, squeezing the girl's shoulders. She got lost for a second, but everything's fine now, isn't it, sweetheart? The girl didn't respond. She dropped her gaze, motionless. A cold unease crept into Keanu's chest. He had seen lost children before. They cried, they called for their parents, they reacted. But this girl, she was frozen. Terrified, Keanu crouched again, meeting her eyes. "Do you want to go with her?" The girl swallowed hard, her tiny fist clenched at her sides. She parted her lips, ready to say something, but the woman's grip tightened. Come on, sweetheart. Say something. He's already helped us a lot." Her voice remained sweet, but an urgency seeped into her tone. The girl looked away. The air between them grew heavier. Keanu wasn't a cop. He wasn't a detective, but his instincts had never failed him before. And right now, every fiber of his being screamed that something was very, very wrong. The woman's smile never wavered, but her posture did. Just slightly. A shift of weight, a flicker of tension. "Anyway," she said, "thank you again, Mr. Reeves. Everything is under control." She turned, pulling the girl with her. But then, just as she was being led away, the girl lifted her eyes to Keanu, a silent plea. A desperate look that said everything her lips couldn't. Keanu's stomach turned. Something was wrong, and he wasn't about to let it go. Keanu had anticipated the woman's answer, but now he studied the girl more closely, and something wasn't right. When the woman said the name Sophie, the child didn't react the way she should have. No relief, no confirmation, not even a glance in her direction. If this woman was truly her aunt, why didn't Sophie look reassured? The woman must have sensed Keanu's hesitation because her grip on the girl's hand tightened. It was subtle, but Keanu saw it, saw how the child shrank slightly, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't paying attention. And that's when it clicked. Sophie had never spoken her name. From the moment he found her, she hadn't said a single word. So how did this woman know it? Keanu's gaze sharpened a ba. "Gujarat, Esprita. Uso, you're her mother's sister?" The woman let out a forced chuckle. "That's right. Look, I appreciate your concern, Mr. Reeves, but everything is fine. No need to worry. Keanu glanced around. A few people strolled through the parking lot, loading groceries into their cars, chatting. No one else seemed to notice the tension thickening in the air. It was as if he was the only one truly seeing what was happening. He turned back to the woman. If she's fine, why isn't she saying anything? His voice remained calm, but his words were deliberate. The woman stepped forward, still wearing that carefully crafted smile, but now there was an edge to her tone. She's shy. She's always been. Besides, she's just scared because she got lost. You know how kids are. Keanu didn't respond right away. He just watched, observed. Sophie still avoided eye contact. Her body remained tense as if trying to disappear. The woman noticed Keanu's hesitation and, without thinking, squeezed the child's hand again, harder this time. "Oh, come on, sweetheart," she urged, her voice still gentle but laced with something else. Something controlling. Sophie blinked rapidly, struggling to hold back tears. She was scared. Keanu straightened, his voice firm but still friendly. Before you go, why don't we ask store security for help? Just to be sure everything is okay." For the first time, the woman hesitated. It was brief, just a second, but enough for Keanu to see the truth. She blinked quickly, regaining composure, then shook her head with a short laugh. "Oh, that won't be necessary," she said. "Like I told you, everything's fine." A deliberate step back, not moving aside but just enough to see what Sophie would do. And then it happened. The girl shifted ever so slightly, stepping in the same direction as if instinctively wanting to follow him. The woman noticed instantly. Her grip on Sophie's wrist tightened, hard. The child flinched, almost letting out a small sound of pain, but quickly swallowed it down. It was quick, almost imperceptible. But for Keanu, it was enough. He stepped forward again, placing himself between them. His voice was calm but unwavering. "I think it would be best if we make sure everything is okay." The woman's laugh this time was hollow. "I understand that you want to help, but honestly, this is going a little too far." Keanu didn't budge. His eyes locked onto Sophie's. She opened and closed her mouth several times, trying to say something, but no words came out. That's when the woman's mask cracked. The practiced smile vanished. Her posture stiffened. And for the first time Keanu saw it, an icy flash of anger in her cold, calculating eyes. She stepped forward, meeting his gaze with a new, unsettling intensity. Her voice dropped lower, carrying an ominous weight. "We don't have time for this anymore. Let's go, sweetheart." And without waiting for a response, she started dragging the girl away. A quiet chuckle escaped her lips, cold, detached. "Don't worry, Mr. Reeves, everything is under control." But then, Sophie looked at Keanu, and in that moment, he knew. Something was very, very wrong. Time seemed to slow. Keanu felt the weight of every passing second, every subtle movement. The woman's urgency had shifted. She was no longer trying to appear casual. She just wanted to leave. Fast. Keanu looked at Sophie again. Her small hands trembled. Her wide, pleading eyes locked onto his. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. But the desperation in her expression was louder than words. The woman's grip tightened further, and Sophie instinctively tried to pull away. It was a tiny movement, a quiet attempt to free herself, but Keanu saw it. A silent plea, a stifled scream. Keanu took a slow, deep breath. If he acted rashly, he could scare the woman into running. If she disappeared now, he might never see this child again. He had to be careful. "You seem to be in a hurry," he said, watching the tension in the woman's shoulders. But before you go, can the girl at least tell me she's okay?" The woman froze. It was just for a second, a single moment of hesitation. But Keanu caught it. Sophie didn't move, didn't speak. The woman forced a smile. She already did, didn't she? Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Actually, no, she hasn't said a word." The woman's lips pressed together. Her expression darkened. "She's shy." Keanu's voice didn't waver. Or scared. The woman's posture stiffened. "Look, I really appreciate your concern," she said, trying to sound composed. "But we're leaving now." Keanu didn't move aside. "I just want to hear it from her." The woman's eyes darted around the parking lot, scanning her surroundings, searching for something or someone. Keanu noticed. And then he decided to test something. He shifted slightly, as if stepping back, giving space, as if he was about to let them go. And Sophie took a small, instinctive step toward him. It was subtle, barely a movement, but for Keanu, it was all the confirmation he needed. The woman noticed immediately. Her grip on Sophie's arm tightened, yanching her back. Keanu's stomach turned. No more doubts. He took a firm step forward, positioning himself directly in front of them, blocking their path. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. The woman stopped abruptly. Her smile was gone. Her eyes narrowed, filled with something far darker than irritation. "Oh, look, I already told you. I'm her aunt." Her voice was sharper now, barely concealing the frustration bubbling beneath. "This is getting out of hand. Now please step aside." Keanu ignored her. He looked at Sophie one last time. She was standing still, but her eyes were pleading. And then she did something that changed everything. That puzzle clicked into place. This wasn't just some random abduction. This woman had been watching Sophie. She knew exactly who the girl was, and that meant this was planned. Keanu's grip on Sophie's hand tightened protectively as he sprinted forward, his instincts screaming at him to stop this woman before she disappeared into the maze of cars. He could hear the distant chatter of bystanders, the growing murmur of confusion, but no one was moving fast enough to intervene. The woman was heading toward the far side of the parking lot, toward the exit. If she made it past the rows of cars, she could vanish into the streets, and finding her again would be near impossible. Keanu picked up speed. "Sophie, hold on," he urged, his voice steady despite the fire burning in his lungs. Sophie didn't let go. The woman darted between two parked SUVs, her wild eyes searching for a way out. Just as she was about to clear the row, Keanu lunged forward, closing the distance. "Stop!" he commanded. The woman turned, her face twisting in fury. For the first time, real fear flickered in her expression. And then she reached into her coat. Keanu's instincts screamed. He didn't know what she was about to pull out. A weapon? A phone? Something worse? But he couldn't risk finding out. In one swift motion, he stepped forward, blocking Sophie with his body as he grabbed the woman's wrist. "Enough!" he growled, his voice carrying the weight of finality. She struggled, her body twisting violently as she tried to free herself. "Let me go," she screeched. But Keanu held firm. "You're not going anywhere," he said through gritted teeth. And then the wail of sirens pierced the air. A flash of red and blue lights bathed the parking lot as a police cruiser screeched to a halt near the entrance. The woman's face went pale. She knew it was over. Before she could make one last desperate attempt to flee, two officers were already running toward them. Keanu released her wrist just as the officers took over, grabbing her arms and forcing her hands behind her back. She thrashed, her screams turning into venomous curses, but the officers restrained her with practiced efficiency. "She's trying to kidnap this girl," Keanu said, his breath still heavy from the chase. He gently knelt beside Sophie, his eyes scanning her face. "Are you okay?" Sophie, trembling but safe, nodded. Her small fingers clutched his sleeve tightly, as if afraid to let go. One of the officers turned to him. "We got multiple calls about a disturbance. You said this woman was abducting her?" Keanu nodded, still keeping a steadying hand on Sophie's shoulder. She knew Sophie's name before she even spoke. She kept forcing her to leave. And he exhaled, shaking his head. Well, she didn't react the way an actual relative would. The officer turned to Sophie. "Sweetheart, do you know this woman?" Sophie shook her head, her lips pressing together as fresh tears welled in her eyes. That was all the confirmation they needed. The woman's furious protests were drowned out as the officers secured her wrists in handcuffs. "You don't understand," she shrieked. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. This isn't over." Keanu met her glare with an icy stare of his own. "Yeah," he muttered. "It is." The officers moved quickly, guiding the struggling woman toward the police car. As they did, Keanu finally exhaled, the tension in his chest loosening just slightly. He turned back to Sophie, who was still gripping his arm. "You're safe now," he told her gently. For the first time, the little girl's lips trembled into a small, hesitant smile. And then, for the first time since he found her, she spoke. "Thank you." Keanu smiled back, ruffling her hair. And as the sirens faded into the distance, carrying the woman away, Keanu knew one thing for sure. He had been exactly where he was meant to be that day.